Hey, be nice.
I didn't think Casco was in the county.
No,
We
that's
just moved in. We just moved in. Okay, I think are we live, Travis? Okay, and everybody is here that we need, I guess. Wow, okay. Well, good evening and welcome to the Cumberland County Commissioners of our meeting of February 15th, 2022. Well, this county commissioner of a meeting is held on a Zoom and the public may watch with the YouTube of a video stream live on cumberlandcounty.org/live. Where the public can submit comments to Kennedy@cumberlandcounty.org during of the meeting. As I have a motion to call the meeting with the order.
So moved.
Second.
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 Okay, we got a second. Catherine, can you do a roll call?
Okay, Commissioner Cloutier,
Yes.
Commissioner Coward,
here, present.
Commissioner Gordon,
Yes.
Commissioner Jameson,
Yes.
and Chair Watonis.
Yes.
Okay,
Okay, well, next on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the special meeting minutes of January 24th, 2022. Do I have a motion?
Move
Move approval. Second.
Second. Okay. Catherine, can you do a roll call?
Commissioner Cloutier,
Yes.
Commissioner Coward,
Yes.
Commissioner Gordon,
Yes.
Commissioner Jameson,
Yes.
and Chair Watonis.
Yes. Okay. Well, next is the informational reports and a presentation. And I'm going to turn this over to the sheriff. Sheriff or Kevin, I'm going to turn this over to you.
Thank you, Mrs. Chair. I appreciate you having us tonight. I'm going to introduce Colleen Hilton, who's the chair of our Jail Board of Visitors, in a minute, but a little background is that we've had a Jail Board of Visitors since about 2011, and we met informally a couple of times a year, if possible, if we could get a quorum, but at least one time a year. And during those meetings, every Jail Board of Visitors got a tour of the jail, so they understood what we were doing. And then they had open access to it going forward. We would meet, we'd talk about certain things, whether it's budget, mental health, substance use, some of the other things, accreditation. In fact, during one of our accreditations, we actually scheduled the Jail Board of Visitors meeting to kind of tag along with the opening of our assessment, when we had assessors actually come in from out of state and do the end briefing, et cetera. In June of this year, there was a training which Colleen Hilton and one of the other Jail Board of Visitors members attended, and it was more structured, and we learned that the law around Jail Board of Visitors at that time was more structured. I think we were one of the first, if not the first, to have a Jail Board of Visitors back in 2011. And it was one of the things that my predecessor, Mark Dion, suggested on his way out the door was that, yeah, you might want to consider having a Jail Board of Visitors meeting. So in June, we learned that not only should we have a Board of Visitors, but it's a structured makeup, which required me to actually take a board of about 10 people, many of whom were really dedicated, and streamline that down to 5 people, meeting certain criteria. Those members are Colleen Hilton, who's probably the most seasoned member. She's been on for since the start. Cushman Anthony, who's a former attorney, retired attorney. He's an advocate for jail or inmate programs. Hamza Khan, who was, I came to know him a few years ago when he was an activist at USM, really speaking out for the new citizens in the greater Portland area. Garrett Stewart and Victor Dumas. Victor Dumas was actually, I was pointed in his direction because I needed somebody that works in the mental health / substance use disorder area. So those were our five. I had to tell about five others that were very loyal, that I only could have five based on this information I gained in June. So what else we gained was the fact that we needed to have a tour. So I encouraged the commissioners to come in, and that was kind of difficult given the fact that we were up and down with COVID outbreaks during the holiday season. Actually, frankly, we've been in a COVID outbreak since August, for the lack of a better description. So they came in, two individuals came in on a morning and took a tour. Two individuals took a tour in the evening. So it was 4 out of 5, and they weren't all together. So they got varying looks at the jail during their tours. And what we found out in the training in June was that not only do they have to take a tour, but they provide a report to me, and then I provide a report to the county commissioners. Now, the state law really focuses on mental health, which is a big part of what we do at the jail, but there's a lot of other things that I think are important as well. So I did ask them to look at the mental health, but there's other things like substance use disorders. Are we doing good things there? Medical, and just the basic medical treatment, et cetera. And then you have the other things like people of color and how they're treated as well. So I kind of asked the jail boards of visitors to kind of look at everything as a whole. And so Colleen is the chair. She wrote up the report. And one thing I thought was, instead of giving me a report that I give to you, let's make it more formal and have Colleen actually give you the report in a public forum. And we'll go from there. So without further ado, I turn it over to Ms. Colleen Hilton.
Okay. Thank you, Sheriff. And you've hit upon many of the key points that are found in the report, so I won't belabor that. The sheriff hit upon the makeup of the Board of Visitors, and I want you to know that when we toured the jail, we had free and fair access. Nobody was watching who we were talking to, what was being said, and we were able to inspect all aspects of the jail. Excuse me. I would say that one of the biggest complaints that I heard, and it wasn't necessarily a complaint, more of a concern, and as did some of the other members, was the challenges with the court system dates. So many of them are awaiting dates or anxious to hear dates for when their cases will be heard. So that was, I would say for me, that was the predominant concern. People were pleased with the services, although as the sheriff informed you during COVID, which has really been a prolonged global pandemic. I think we're going on our 3rd year now. Many of the programs have had to be suspended for the safety of the residents as well as the staff. But we do, and you will see in the report, a listing of all of the various programs that are available to our residents. I asked the sheriff, what's the politically correct term? Inmates, convicts, residents, and we're pretty much sticking with residents, which you'll see throughout the report. I do want to point out, though, really the incredible work that's been done by the sheriff and his team to manage through this pandemic. This has not been easy. I work in public health, I work in healthcare, and this has not been easy for many people, but every day there's a new twist. And I think that the sheriff, along with all of his team, have done a really nice job connecting with the community wherever possible to make life better for the residents. They've supplied tablets, videos. You may have seen some articles in the paper about some disgruntled individuals feeling isolated. Well, the world has been pretty isolated through this pandemic, including people that reside in nursing homes. But all efforts were made to increase visitation wherever possible, whether that was by FaceTime or video chat or phone connectivity, especially through the holidays. So you have the report before you. I'll hit upon a couple of recommendations that came out from all of the visitors. So it's not just my opinion, it's the summary of all of us that did visiting. Let me also say before I share recommendations, the sheriff and his team have always commented whenever the board brings up a concern or an issue on how supportive you all have been as commissioners to support the work that they do. And so some of our recommendations, just keep that in mind, the spirit of the recommendation. So the current electronic medical record used by our medical providers is quite out of date, and they could certainly benefit from a new system. And we all know new systems are not necessarily inexpensive. You all, I'm sure, are aware of the challenges that the jail has experienced with respect to staffing. Staffing is a problem everywhere, I think in every industry. And there have been times when the jail has been operating at almost 50% employees. And Sheriff, correct me if I'm wrong. There have been times we've had to limit the influx of new residents. And so we've worked collaboratively with our local communities to alert them when we're in a sort of a staffing crisis. And much of the senior team has stepped in and covered shifts to help us get through during this difficult time. We are seeing of late some improvement in recruitment, and we're hopeful that that will continue. So any partnerships we can do for increasing staff, increasing connectivity with community resources to help with once the inmate is released, that they can have some case management to be successful and not to bounce back to the jail. That's always a recommendation that you'll hear from this board. There's also been a recommendation to advocate for the Maine Department of Corrections to move their sentenced individuals to other premises to alleviate the effects of the acute staffing shortages. That recommendation comes from, one or two particularly, but I would lean on the sheriff or others if they think that's a wise recommendation. The sheriff alluded to medication-assisted treatment. Many of the residents that come into our jail have significant substance use disorders, and some of them have had access in the past to medication-assisted treatment, methadone, Suboxone, and others. And so a process whereby we are ready to continue on with that is always going to be helpful. And then to engage those residents in ongoing counseling as well. Consider a review of residents' grievance policy and procedures, and consider a step which includes an independent review. Although we do have a policy, it does not have Department of Correction oversight, and we may benefit from designating one contact person to streamline when able. Obviously, we're going to field a lot of grievances out of jail. So an independent look is helpful. We appreciate the many programs which were put in place pre-COVID that supported residents in their preparations to return to the community. Once staffing can be stabilized, we encourage the resumption of all the programs which will support successful reentry. And that goes without saying. I know that everyone is supportive of that. It just hasn't been possible during this time. So we make these recommendations with full understanding that all considerations of additional supports for residents may be challenging or impossible without lessening the impact of the current staffing shortage. But we also acknowledge the ongoing global pandemic and its continued impact on operations and programming considerations. So happy to take any questions. And again, I just want to highlight what I think is a very well-run facility and some great collaboration that has happened with the sheriff and others in public health to manage through a really difficult pandemic.
Thank you, Colleen. Do we have any more questions? Commissioner Gordon.
Yeah, I'm very interested in this current electronic medical record system. Colleen, is that something that's common throughout, or even our sheriff, but is that something that's common between all jail systems in the state?
I'll put that one to Sheriff Joyce.
I can jump in as well on this.
Okay,
Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, we were, I think, actually sort of towards the latter end of it when we shifted out from the paper records 7 or 8 years ago. It was a pretty huge undertaking at the time to shift from the paper to digital. We've had Aaron Gilpatrick working on this a little bit, and because that sort of drumbeat of dissatisfaction with our current electronic medical records as being inadequate has been going on for a while now. What we are hearing early on is that it doesn't look like the conversion cost will be anything like it was first go around because it's all digital now. So there is other software out there, and some of the early phases of starting to cost that out is starting to occur.
Yeah, what I'm interested in, Alex, is it common with the other jails? Is there a common electronic medical record system?
I think I
Sure.
can try to answer that one. I'm not sure how accurate, but some are more advanced than others. So I can't say across the board that there's electronic medical records. You know, we were lucky enough 7 years ago to be able to get electronic medical records. And one of the things we found is, in a perfect world, if every other jail had the same medical record technology, electronic medical record technology, then we could fire off the medical records when we moved an individual to the state system, et cetera. The state is on electronic medical records. But I can't say for certain that everyone is on that. One of the things that we envision, and again, we were lucky in 2007 7 years ago, because it was about 7 years ago, we started with the electronic medical. Everything was laden down into paper, which made it really a problem if we had to evacuate the jail, because we had to get medical records. Now we can just grab a laptop and go. We won't have everything, but we can do that. You know, what I envision down the road with technology is, if we send somebody to the hospital, we ought to be able to send the electronic medical records to the hospital, and then they can send it back. The same thing for the other jails and the prisons in the state of Maine, the same thing. And it's called a hub and spoke, where the communication kind of goes back and forth. Right now, a lot of cases, we're printing out documents when we transfer somebody to another jail, which again, part of it may be because we can't communicate with their electronic medical records, but the other thing is they probably don't have them.
Well, and I won't continue this conversation or on this topic on my part anyway, much longer. But I do have a comment for others. The state is at the point of debating and whether or not to pass a jail funding bill, and in that is the records that we keep for what the status is of a prisoner. But if there's another dimension to it, which is medical, we ought to be looking at that also. My understanding is that the state is not supportive of it at this point. That they don't see that it's a possibility to fund that. But what I'm going to be interested in, and I'll have an offline discussion with you, Kevin, and probably the MSA, is that how valuable is this to us? If it's something that you, as sheriffs, and we're constantly transferring data between jails, is probably very important. And then with the position that Colleen just expressed about it being medical and what they're doing, it could be a handy tool. With that said, I'll leave that, but I'm good piece of information. Thank you.
Do we have any other questions from any of the other commissioners? Okay, if not, thank you, Sheriff. Thank you. Oh,
We got Tom over here.
One from Tom. Commissioner Coward.
I've read the report. I found it very interesting. I don't have any particular questions about it. I think it confirms a lot of what I already thought I knew. So now I think I know it a little bit better. But Colleen, I really want to thank you and your colleagues for this. I mean, this is an important thing that we do. We spend a lot of time thinking about and money managing our jail, and it's as you know, it's the largest department in county government across the state, and certainly in Cumberland County. So we really rely on folks that volunteer to come in and kind of be our eyes and ears in the facility. And thank you for the report. And I'm very pleased to hear the praise you have for the sheriff for cooperating with this. I think this is a tribute to the sheriff and a tribute to our organization. So thank you very much, Colleen.
You're welcome. And one just final comment, and yes, it is a large jail, but it's also, as we're constantly aware of, it's also a very large mental health facility, quite frankly.
Yeah.
And with the
largest one in the state, right?
Yeah, and with the mental health crisis in our state, I just can't underscore that enough. The support would be beneficial to the sheriff and his team to manage the complexity of the residents in the jail. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it. If you have any questions, certainly you can email me, or the sheriff can get that to me or others on the board. Thank you. And thank you for your service. I know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is I ask at this time that we have a motion to accept the report.
So move.
Do I have a
Second.
second? Second by Commissioner. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none. Catherine, can you do a roll call, please?
Sure. Commissioner Cloutier,
Yes.
Commissioner Coward,
Yes.
Commissioner Gordon,
Yes.
Commissioner Jameson,
Yes.
and Chair Watonis.
Well, yes. Well, maybe, but once that this pandemic is over and stuff, we could do a jail tour. It's been maybe 3 or 4 years, since I had one. So I'm sure there's a lot of things that were changed. So, Kevin, would you have anything to add?
No, the jail doors are always open. I'll tell you what I told the Board of Visitors. We can get you a jail tour, even with what we've got going on. We'll just keep you out of the hot zones. And as long as you're masked and stuff, we can make that happen. So it doesn't have to wait until we're out of this, because I'm not sure
Right. Okay.
there's any light at the end of the tunnel. The other thing I think it's important to mention too is, in between this, Colleen's company actually came in and did some testing for us when we were in dire need of testing. And that's, I mean, again, this day and age, testing was no big deal 2 years ago. Now it's, vaccinations and boosters and child vaccinations and stuff. So trying to find nurses and medical personnel that come in and do testing, which we have to do a lot of, has really been difficult. So again, it is helpful to have, Colleen understanding it, because, I'm not sure, but I think when public health reached out to them, she kind of knew what we're up against with the numbers of people we have. So, as far as the other recommendations, I can't wait until we can get back to the programs. We led the state with programming, and I know that Cushman Anthony is a big proponent of this, and it's just a matter of trying to figure out what our future looks like and how we can script that back to normal, whatever normal is. So thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Thanks,
Okay.
everyone. Good night.
Good night now. Thank you again.
Colleen.
Welcome.
Moving on. Comments from the public. Do we have any? With Travis? No? No. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So we're moving on. Okay. The next one is the consent agenda approvals. The first one is with 22-012. It's the authorization the county manager to sign the communications contract with the town of Harrison and the county for 2022 to 2025. Do we have anybody? Okay. No concerns on that? Okay. Do we want to do this as a whole vote, or do we want
Yes.
to?
Yeah, I'd move passage of the entire consent agenda.
Second,
Second, okay, gotcha. Do you want me to read the second one or no?
no.
No, okay. Okay, Catherine. Can you do
Commissioner
a vote?
Cloutier,
Yes.
Commissioner Coward,
Yes.
Commissioner Gordon,
Yes,
Commissioner Jameson,
Yes.
and Chair Watonis.
Yes. Okay, moving on, I would like to take something out of, it's out of order. I'd like to take 22-0117, the appointment of the CIA arena, and I'm going to turn this over, to you, Jim, because I think Mike has somewhere to go, and we don't want him to stay here for the whole evening and have to wait for us. So, yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yes, thank you, Commissioner. I figured we were gonna get into meaty items here and why Mike sit through those items, so I bet he has other things to do tonight. I'd like to introduce Michael Conte, the new general manager at the Cross Insurance Arena. Mike comes to us as the assistant general manager of the arena for the last couple of years, as well as head of events. And Mike has been with the facility for, 15, 20 years now. So he knows where every nut and bolt is in the place, and has done a number of the jobs going up through the chain into the director's seat. So we would like to have the commissioners, one, get to know Mike as the next general manager, but two, more of a formality is appoint Mike as the general manager. He comes to us in high regards from every interview panel that he has gone through, which is 3 different interview panels. It was a nationwide search for this position. And we're very happy that Mike rose above everyone else, and he's able to join us and continue his work in the arena. So if all is okay with the commissioners, I'd ask for appointment of Michael Conte, general manager of the Cross Insurance Arena. Thank you.
Commissioner Gordon.
yeah, can we have some comment as to how the trustees looked at Mike?
The trustees, let me back up and just say that Mike was selected with a small handful of interviewees. We had 3 interviewees that were not only interviewed by Spectra, but also Live Nation, which is a large promoter that brings a lot of acts into our region. And then lastly, he was interviewed by a subcommittee of the trustees, which included about 4 trustees, and then Alex and I sat in on that. And I will tell you that we had rave reviews coming from Live Nation that Mike was the man, top candidate, as well as he was the top candidate coming out of the trustees. And the trustees have brought forth a recommendation for appointment of Mike as the general manager.
Do we
Thank
have
you.
any other questions? Mike, would you like to say a couple of words?
Yeah, very much so. Thank you for those kind words, Jim. It was a great interview process. I can't begin to tell this group how great your team was, the interview process, the folks here at the arena that were championing me to go ahead and go after this job. It's been an absolute honor so far. I've only been in this seat officially for about 3 weeks. I know it's still the honeymoon phase, but I love my job, and I really enjoy booking events. I like having the lights on in here, even if it's a small event or a big rock concert. I get what the community needs from the building. I love working with the community, and just on a go forward, I just want to keep continuing to add creative ideas to the arena to make some events that we might not have had before be successful here. We've already done it with 2 trade shows, and I just look forward to continuing down that road to bring this arena to another level. It's been great so far, and I look forward to a long future with you folks.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. Okay. Do I have a motion for the appointment?
Move passage.
No pass.
Second.
Second.
Second. Okay. Catherine, can you do a roll call, please?
Commissioner Cloutier,
Yes.
Commissioner Coward,
Yes.
Commissioner Gordon,
Yes.
Commissioner Jameson,
Yes.
and Chair Watonis.
Yes.
All right.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. Well, now you can go back to work.
Thank you. Have a good night, guys.
No,
Have a
Mike,
good night. Yeah.
Mike, stay with us. Oh,
What?
that's
Oh.
all right. Mike, we have our next item is coming from
Oh,
insurance.
Right.
rates. We're
can you get
okay.
him back on?
No, that's all right. We can handle it.
Okay. Well, Jim, we'll let you, we'll take that, our next item then. 22-014.
All right, this item is coming before you for the purchase of side curtains for the Cross Insurance Arena. As you're aware, when we do quarter bowl or half bowl shows, there's typically a big blue curtain behind the stage, as well as curtains that run up into the stands to kind of create a homey feel or an intimate feeling for those smaller shows that are in the arena. A lot of time, or all the time, we need to rent that curtain on the side panels of the stage. Very costly, and we don't make as much during the show. However, it allows us to book smaller shows. This item is being brought forth to purchase the curtains outright so that we have them in the arena, and we would be able to book more and more smaller shows, greatly diversifying the number of type acts that we will be able to bring into the arena. For instance, by doing this, we are able to bring the Blue Man Group in the next couple of months. That is an event that is not typically a full arena show, but a very intimate feeling show, a felt show that you want to be close to the stage, and to have these side curtains that kind of close off the bowl will make all the world. And that's a requirement of the Blue Man Group for coming in. So this item went out to bid. It received 3 bids. The lowest responsible bid was from Production Services of Maine, LLC, for $87,265. That not only includes the curtains, but there's also the need for the mechanical lifts that are installed on the beams that lift the curtains up into place. So we are asking the commissioners to award this $87,265.88 to Production Services. The funding mechanism will be coming out of the ARPA funds that we have. I think it's the revenue loss account that we're using for this.
Oh, Jim, I have a question. The invoice or the bid that was in with the packet says it's 84. Is that it says it's 84 with 984.20.
It must have. Good catch, Commissioner. They must have changed it between what I had received initially to what we have put in the packet. I'm just looking through the supporting documentation to make sure that we're not missing anything. No, I think that would be the appropriate amount then. Thank you for picking that up. So it would be an award of $84,984.20, which that is actually the 85, that's under the 85,000 that was earmarked by the commissioners during our allocations to county projects back a number of months ago.
Okay.
I'll
So
move passage.
do I have a second?
Second.
I'll second.
Do we have any discussion? Seeing no discussion, I will call for a vote, Catherine.
Commissioner Cloutier,
Yes.
Commissioner Coward,
Yes.
Commissioner Gordon,
Yes.
Commissioner Jameson,
Yes.
and Chair Watonis.
Yes, okay. Okay, well, the next one is with 22-015 with Jim. I'll turn that over to you also.
Thank you. I'll introduce this and then pass it over to Liz for further presentation. This item, as the commissioners are aware, over the last couple of meetings, staff has been keeping the commissioners up to speed on what is happening within our region with regards to the homelessness and the asylum seekers coming into our region. We have brought into many discussions and Liz, the public health manager, has been heavily involved, and I've asked her to really look into what role the county could play. Where are the gaps? As you've heard us talk over the last couple of months, what we're looking at is being a resource and looking where gaps exist within our region. And if we're able to fill those gaps, that's the role that we feel we can take on the short term of the development of our public health department. And so Liz has been in a number of conversations. She has found some areas that there is a need, a significant need. However, there's not the available funds from any agency or community to fill that need. And we have been talking amongst ourselves that maybe this is an appropriate use of ARPA funds. It is some short-term, fill the gap, fill the need, use of the funds. But we feel as though it is a very prudent use of the funds and one that would go a long ways of really making an impact on the current situation that we're seeing or experience here in the region with homelessness. So if I could ask Liz to kind of run us down through her memo. She did a nice job outlining the issue within her memo and giving us some data around the types of homeless families versus individuals, where they come from and all. So Liz, can you take it from here?
Hello, good evening all. Thanks for having me again. So I have the memo in front of you, and I just thought I'd just highlight a couple of things. So in terms of, the overarching view of what's happening right now, it's definitely evolving. Currently right now, there are 509 single adults. So they sort of put them in different groupings of single adults and then families. So with single adults, the Oxford Street shelter generally reaches capacity. So they have overflow shelters in 3 or 4 different locations. Many of those are in Portland and South Portland primarily for the single adults. And right now there's 509 of those adults. But what I put for you in there is that the last residents of single adults who came to Oxford Street for an intake between October and December, there were 304 single adults that came in those 3 months seeking emergency shelter. And so the percentages are from those last 3 months. So 29% of those folks came from Portland. That was their last residence. 20% came from one of 15 other towns in Cumberland County. Those towns, just to sort of share with you where folks come from to Oxford Street to seek emergency shelter. In those 3 months, folks came from Brunswick, Gorham, Harrison, Scarborough, South Portland, Westbrook, Wyndham, Yarmouth, Falmouth, Gorham, Gray, Bridgeton, Freeport, and New Gloucester. And some of them have multiple folks coming. Some it was one person, 1 month, or various people throughout that 3 months. Then 27% come from other towns in Maine outside of Cumberland County. And then 24% came from other states. And then there are folks that are in other shelters that we have in Cumberland County, which I've shared for you there. So generally those housing single adults are in the South Portland and Portland region. Then in terms of families, there's primarily, there's a large amount of families that are that have been arriving over the last several months. It appears that people are still arriving from the southern border. Mostly they're seeking asylum from Angola and Democratic Republic of Congo. And folks, they are come to the family shelter and then are moved to different hotels across the region, including ones in Portland, South Portland, Westbrook, Freeport, and Old Orchard. And I know that there's some conversations about additional hotels because they're really running out of hotel space in those locations. Because there are also Maine Public Health uses a hotel for folks who need to go for when they have COVID for isolating. There are other hotels that are being used for emergency rental assistance by Opportunity Alliance. So we're sort of like running, or keep sort of expanding into other hotels. So that leaves about 1,300 people in emergency shelter across the region. I think there was a question last time for me about where sort of how much does it cost and where payments coming from. And the way Portland is essentially relying on reimbursement from general assistance and FEMA. And then they've calculated that somewhere around 1.5 million a month. And that obviously, again, it keeps changing over time. So we held a meeting with a large group of folks and came up with the list that really rose to the top for the group that included South Portland, Portland, and then a bunch of community-based providers. Transportation was really one of the #1 issues that does not have a resolution or like a while it's possible that there are some funding sources that could happen and some funding through FEMA, it's very complicated right now to figure out. And so it remains just like a huge gap where folks may have a few trips on the bus, but other than that, there's really a massive lack of transportation. Then there were some other things around, sort of health needs and triaging health needs and housing navigation. And then there was some separate meetings that are really around healthcare needs, which are vast and great. But some of the items, transportation again was highlighted as a primary issue because it also comes up when we talk to some of the towns they end up transporting folks when in an ambulance when an ambulance might not be needed because it's urgent but not emergency, but people don't have transportation. So that has been coming up a lot. And then you'll see there's just basic supplies that are really missing and how to get the supplies, even if we were able to get supplies, how to get the supplies to the people who need them and be able to track them. So with that said, we considered together as sort of a group of us at the and the staff, figuring out what are some of the things that we could be doing to support this regional problem, this regional situation. And we came up with this list of things. The transportation request is really around, it's twofold. One is around planning. Even if we were to find some funding, it is very difficult right now to know how to support some of the transportation. There's a need for some conversations and some facilitation of meetings between all the transportation folks who are currently providing transportation. This would include RTP and some of the community-based organizations, Metro, South Portland, and have a conversation with them really around who can do what. How can we do some collaboration and some moving towards having a system where you can develop a plan for cost-effective transportation that may deliver public transportation with buses, but also perhaps some folks may need door-to-door service because of very small children, very pregnant or disabled or very elderly. And then we're asking for some bus pass money. Again, this is to tide us over towards a time when we have a larger plan in place that's a sustainable plan for transportation. And then you'll see basic supplies that are very much sort of urgently needed, and there isn't necessarily a source for these at this moment, and seed funding for support for really the management of donations. And perhaps volunteer management, but really the donation management. Because I think there's an opportunity for folks in the community to donate if we had a mechanism for providing those donations. So I'm happy, that's sort of our plan that we've put in place for you. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Liz. Appreciate it. Again, we're asking the commissioners to consider $94,000 for this effort. These funds would come from ARPA. And so staff is here to answer any questions that the commissioners have. Thank you.
Do we have any more questions from the commissioners? Commissioner Jameson.
Thanks, Sue. Liz, thank you very much for your study and your presentation, very thorough, and addresses a very telling need in the county. My concern and question is this. Part of this is planning to go through and to study these very urgent and dire needs, but it appears at the end of 3 months, those needs are going to need to be funded again. I mean, is that, can you address the issue of how long do you think it will, how much, I guess that's what the study for, but this seems to be a stopgap measure, and which I think is needed, but you're going to be back here and these needs are not going to go away. You're going to have a much probably a deeper ask after you do the study. Is that fair to say?
Well, I'd say with the transportation bit, I mean, I actually think that part of what we're trying to do is figure out is to support the efforts of all these different organizations who are trying to figure out how do we develop a system that could work for a longer period of time. And so they're actually, you can use FEMA funds for some transportation needs. So there is the ability to have, like, provide Metro passes to folks with FEMA reimbursable funds that the city of Portland could do. Right now, they do not have the staff capacity and the additional capacity to even to do all the work that it would entail to figure out the system for having ongoing payment for Metro passes. So again, part of the money would be to help develop that system so that it then happens with FEMA funding. So that would actually be a source for some of the ongoing payments for bus passes. The door-to-door transportation, one of the things, so there are right now, Maine Health, Greater Portland Health, and an organization called MANA have funding to provide some level of door-to-door transportation, but as some of that runs out, it's what they've been doing right now is using 207 taxi, and it has not been very reliable and consistent, and it's especially hasn't been working very well for those who have children and need to put car seats in. It's like a very complicated situation. So part of the hope is that in the development of a plan for who qualifies for door-to-door and how would that work, that we could then be requesting funds from other places. There's actually lots of other avenues for requesting funding if there was actually a plan to say, this is what should get funded, and this is the sort of parameters by which we would fund that. So the study is not so much to come back to the commissioners and say, we now would like you to fund it. It's more for us to be providing a service to the community to say, okay, now we all have decided on a plan, and now let's all figure out how do we fund this together. So I think that's sort of how we would handle the transportation bit. The basic supplies for families, yes, some of it is a stopgap measure. There are about 320 families so the pack and plays and car seats would fill the whole need that exists right now. So if additional families came, yes, we wouldn't necessarily have car seats and pack and plays for them. But again, my hope is that by asking for the seed money for the donations manager, I actually think, or donation management funds, I actually think there's really a very robust, there are people who can provide the funding and the donations if we had a donation manager to take it in. So for instance, I can give you an example. In Freeport, they've moved some folks to the Freeport Hotel. And the Freeport Community Services, because it's kind of a small amount of families that have moved there, Freeport Community Services really taken up the task of supporting those families, finding volunteers for drivers, doing work around volunteer, getting donations. But they're able to do that for like a small amount. And it's working really quite well but we don't have that for the South Portland, Westbrook region where the bulk of the families are. And I think with that donation management person, we would really be able to meet that need and wouldn't be coming back to you asking for more pack and plays or car seats or diapers.
Thank you for your very detailed study and presentation. It's obviously a good focus and needs to be done.
Okay. Commissioner Gordon.
Yeah, I've heard a number of these presentations that, in my mind, enter into the area of operations. And I believe that when we first obtained these funds from opera, that what we understood was that they're generational funds and that we were going to spend them on capital and assisting communities with capital issues, not operational issues. In my mind, this gets into operations. If you look at the state and the municipalities, this is really in their bailiwick. They are responsible for it totally. They all, both the state and municipalities have opera funds, and I see no reason why they should not be picking up this responsibility, because counties do not have that responsibility by law. And as a result, I'm really reticent to head down this road. At this point, I can't see supporting it.
But why am I putting my hand up? Today, when we did a COGWA meeting, and Mark Woodion, did a presentation on some of this, our same stuff, is he indicated that the city of Portland is doing the advocating for a regional approach for the homeless in Maine, and for the state would to take the lead on this and the efforts, that our coordination, with the municipalities. And I'm tending to fall with Commissioner Gordon. I don't think this is a county issue. I really would think it's more of a state issue, and I'm just afraid that if we give, our money now, in 3 weeks or 3 months, they're going to keep coming back for more. So I think at some point, that we really have to say to the state, this is your responsibility. It's, it shouldn't fall on the municipalities, and it shouldn't fall on the counties. So I'm not in support of this, which I have, with some other reasons, with why I'm not, I was supporting it. But at this point, I can't support this. So, Commissioner Cloutier.
Thanks. I think that there's a lot of substance to what the chair just said and what Commissioner Gordon just said. And it is completely true, I think, that we originally looked at what we were eligible to receive from the federal appropriations, and saw an opportunity to make some changes and investments that could have substantial importance to the region for some time. And I think we still have that opportunity. But I will say this, the three things that have happened here, and our responsibility is to the citizens. It isn't, the three things that have happened is the pandemic, and the need to separate people by 6 feet or more has meant that the very makeshift kind of always playing catch-up approach to addressing homelessness was stressed beyond its capacity to function. And so we started with a problem in the communities that exists and has persisted now for the entire length of the pandemic, 2 years, and we'll be starting year 3 in about 2 weeks. So that was the first. The second is that we had a continued, and not without advocates trying to make changes, we have had a continued makeshift, poorly planned, random, and somewhat isolated into the major cities, not just Portland and South Portland and Westbrook, but all over all the service centers in Maine. There has not been a state response of any substance. And that was on purpose 10 years ago, but it continues because other priorities keep pushing it to the side. And so I would be one to immediately say the solution always is a housing and a homeless solution that is well planned, is thought through on a wide and consistent level, and is fair. We have none of that. And so what we have instead is this kind of makeshift, poorly coordinated, general assistance program, supplemented by all of the things that Liz just spent her time describing as places where some opportunity was perceived and exploited, whether it was long-term, short-term, idiosyncratic, or something else. And so, kudos to her and everyone else that's trying to make something out of a system that is not a system. And of course, the final aspect of it is that Portland, Greater Portland, Cumberland County, in the last 2 years, we have been swamped. And so there is a huge demand that never existed in anybody's imagination until we were confronted with it in the last year or year and a half. So I kind of agree with Commissioner Gordon, with Commissioner Watonis, but frankly, I can't look the other way in relation to what truly is, in my estimation, a crisis. In the city of Portland, I had, in my previous service, had something to do with the housing. I was on the housing committee for a number of years. We negotiated for successive increases in homeless shelter opportunities and fallback programs and that kind of stuff. But, what we are looking at now is what we did times 5. And it's growing by leaps and bounds. And, our area has frankly, a very proud history of being a resettlement community. We have welcomed displaced people from all over the earth for decades. One of the first communities to ever do that. So, we have some pride of ownership in this kind of worthwhile response to helping people come to America, so to speak. And they do that right here in our area. But, so this challenge is not new. And it is not new that it is random, makeshift, and pretty much thrown upon us from whether we volunteer for it or not. So I'm going to support this order. And I do know that there are community groups that have organized themselves to circulate online and in various ways. My wife is very involved in one of them to try to meet what the needs of these people really on an emergency basis. I mean, people are getting emails at 8 o'clock in the morning saying by 9:30 we need this, this, and this, and these community groups are responding. But they need a lot of help, and they need much better coordination. And so, like I say, I'm going to support this. I'm going to wish for all of the things that Commissioner Gordon, Commissioner Watonis have already mentioned. That I'm sure everybody else wants too. But right now, we need to have a place for these people, and there isn't anybody that's going to do it except us.
Commissioner Coward.
Yes, first I have a question. Is and this may be for Alex or it may be for Liz. Is this sort of expenditure clearly authorized under ARPA?
Bullseye,
Is it? Is it?
bullseye.
I assume that means yes, and
Yeah. This core is
right in the middle. Yeah.
Yep.
I have no problem with this. I agree. I mean, I've taken on board. I understand Steve Gordon and Commissioner Watonis's comments about this. I really, I've long ago lost patience with the state on how they handle these issues, because it does need a coordinated statewide effort. This is not just a Portland problem, not just a Cumberland County problem, but nobody's stepping up, and we've got a whole bunch of people that need help, and we've got the means to do it. And if it's authorized under the the source of funds that said yes, this is fine, I think we need to do it, because we've got a continuing emergency on our hands, and this will help people actually get the help they need for to continue on with their activities of life. So I'm perfectly happy to support this, and I'll support it. And I'm not saying anybody here is wrong. I don't say that. I think there is a this is something that should be addressed in a systemic manner, and it hasn't happened. So we, as frequently happens in Cumberland County and in Portland and surrounding communities, we step up to fill the gap that nobody wants to deal with, because we have to. So I'm in support of this.
The other thing that I will learn today in COG is that the interim city manager and one other person from her office, they are actually going to plan a visit, downward to Texas to maybe help coordinate this a little bit better. But there wasn't a whole lot of details on there. Because with what they are seeing, with people coming to Portland, is on their papers, it already says with the address of 54 with Chestnut Street. So they already will know when they arrive here with where they want to go and where they're going. And I found that to be a little bit, it's interesting today. And what the other thing is, I think that we're going, is in a direction that we said that we weren't going to go in, that we weren't going to fund stuff as a startup. And we're here, that you've asked for 20,000 in funding, for the volunteers and whether the management of it. So I don't quite understand with what that money would be used for. Are we going to pay somebody, to come in and will coordinate this effort and to spend this, $95,000? So can you explain that a little bit, Liz?
Sure. So the way we would do the transportation would be an amendment to the contract with Zoe Miller, ZM Strategies. She is the person that is helping with the county health improvement plan. She formerly worked for GPCOG doing tons of their transportation work, and has very close lots of relationships and a great understanding of the transportation system. So it would be in addition to her contract for that transportation work. The other items would be looking for, there are already organizations that are doing some of this work. So we would be supporting those organizations to do the work. They would not come as like people working for the county doing that, doing the work.
Well, I thought that we weren't going to go that way. That was my understanding, with this opera funds. So you're saying that with the 10,000 for Zoe Miller is an additional of the 94,000?
No, I'm sorry. The 10,000 is an additional to her contract that you all signed last month for the county health improvement plan. So she is helping us with the county health improvement plan that's looking at all these health indicators and doing some planning around all the health. So this, looking specifically at transportation for folks who are experiencing homelessness, would be in addition to that contract. So it would just be 10,000. Then the 84,000, the bus passes would either go directly to, so we have not necessarily worked out exactly who would get the funds, but perhaps it's either would go through to Metro to buy bus passes. The volunteer and donations management is seed funds for an organization that is willing to take on the role of doing the donations management. So it's not to hire like a person at the county to do it.
Oh, yeah, I understand that, but you're asking for the 94,000 and then another with 10,000 for Zoe. So you're asking,
No, the 10,000 is included in the transportation details up top. So I just separated it out. And then we have a different proposal. If you approve this proposal, then we're asking you to do a contract amendment for the 10,000, but it's 94 total, including Zoe, the ZM Strategies funds.
Oh, okay. Oh. Okay, yeah. So is there any other, Commissioner Gordon, I'm sorry, I can't see you with all your friends in the background there.
Sorry about that. I'm hearing this, and again, I reiterate that what we discussed was that the opera funds were going to be for capital projects and looked at generational funds. If the commission is so involved in this and believes that this needs to be funded, then why don't we do it with county funds? That's what we're really beginning to discuss. Is we're going to have a program that's come to us that's operational and saying they want this one time, and it's never been a one time. So if we're going to go down that road, let's start now and use funds from the county to provide this. If we really believe that this is the program that we need, we should go into our accounts and see if there's some program we can either defer or change so that we can get the funds to do this.
Commissioner Cloutier.
I'm just addressing the funding, and frankly, I don't think the appropriation of less than $100,000 creates some kind of a precedent that means that we're going to be following along without further thought on some funding basis, because like I've already said, I share the impulse that we want to use these funds for what they are, one-time opportunities that ought to be exploited. But I think I do recognize a crisis, and my specific idea based on or in response or as part of what Commissioner Gordon just said is that I think we already had a discussion sometime in the last month or two. I don't think I was the only one who had the idea that if the counties were authorized to access general assistance contribution from the state, that might be a step towards actually starting to create a regional system that looked like it had more than 5 seconds thought behind its organization and structure. And so, you know, I think that this is an emergency, and it has been. We all hope it's going to abate pretty quick, but the crisis is upon us, and so I don't think that this changes our basic intent. I for myself don't necessarily consider it to be some kind of a precedent that smooths the way for other essentially operational appropriations. But I mean, just a glance at what we know has come through the door for applications for funding shows that there are vast needs, and not all of them that are seeking funding, which is clearly authorized by the ARPA program. Not all of them fall neatly into infrastructure or capital investment categories that we would all recognize. That's it. Thanks.
Commissioner Coward.
Yeah, just briefly, also, I would point out that, you know, one of the county's strategic goals is to start building a county health program, county health support. I think this type of grant program answers that other goal that we already have. You know, I concur with Commissioner Gordon. I mean, if this were normal times, I would be saying, yeah, maybe we ought to appropriate our own county funds to do this, but this is a situation, this is an emergency. And we've got essentially emergency funds. The reason we have these is because of all the things that are causing these problems. And to Commissioner Watonis's point, I mean, every time I'm where, I kind of know where I'm going. So, I mean, I'm not at all put off by the idea that people who are moving to Portland have an address of someplace they can stay. I like to stay in a hotel. I've got money. I can afford to do that. They need to find a place to stay or a place to get services when they get there. So they've done some pre-planning. You know, that doesn't concern me in the least in these situations. So I still support this. I'm happy to do it. In fact, unless somebody has anything else to say, I'll move approval.
Well, I have one question with Liz. What's going to happen come, it's April, when some of these hotels and with the people that are in them are going to have to move because, you know, they need it for tourism. So where are they going to go then? Is there a plan?
I think that's a great question. I don't know necessarily what the plan is at that point. I know some of the hotels are not in a place, they're not, tourism isn't their number one thing that they do. So I'm not necessarily sure of exactly what will happen at that point. There has been some other discussions around where are some other places that people could go. And there is a lot of work around housing navigation to help people find housing. They have moved families into housing. They have moved some individual singles into housing. It's slow going, but they're certainly trying to move as quickly as they can to move people into housing.
Okay, thank you. Well, Commissioner Gordon.
Yeah, one of the things that I haven't heard in this discussion, and this is why I'm so adamant, is I've heard no remarks about where the municipalities stand on this funding, nor where the state is, and what they had to say when you approached them about this, because that is really their responsibility. They're given that. They are supposed to handle this, and just because they're staying silent, or at least that's what I'm understanding, we expect that we're the ones that are supposed to pick this up. I disagree. So, Liz, could you answer where the state and the municipalities are on this?
Well, the municipalities that have been involved in some of the planning include Portland and South Portland. And so they were a part of the decision making around like what are some of the key gaps that don't have funding currently. And so I did not necessarily go to them and say, this is what we're asking for at this point, but I know we have had conversations about trying to work for, find funding for those gaps that we all identified. In terms
So
of the
they,
state.
so they didn't respond.
No, I didn't necessarily go to them with exact numbers and say, this is what I'm asking the commissioners for. But they were a part of, South Portland and Portland were both a part of the conversation around what are the key gaps, and transportation and some of these other, issues around these supply needs were. And of course, when I talked to the city of Portland folks, they were very much on board with this. South Portland, I did not necessarily go to them specifically to ask them for this, because Portland is really the one who's organizing all of the efforts around, really, they're mostly the ones organizing around the needs of homelessness, of people experiencing homelessness. I have not gone directly to the state around this because at this point, there are a lot of people doing a lot of advocacy work, and I'm new to this work here. So I have not done that at this point. So I can't answer to what the state necessarily is thinking or planning or doing at this point. Perhaps
And
others. Yeah, go
I
ahead.
can jump in and just, through a meeting I was in last week, South Portland indicated that they were going to need to use some of their ARPA funds and funnel it into the different services that were being provided by multiple agencies for this population that are living in the hotels. Don't know, we can only assume that Portland's well into it because they're in a sense, the epicenter of it all. Don't know what the other communities like Scarborough, Westbrook, we've heard Freeport Community Services are involved, so they're allocating resources into it. As it relates to the state, within the last week, there has been a spin up of individuals that are starting to reach out to the legislators, to the governor's office. Our own EMA crew have been in touch with MEMA, as well as DHHS. And so there is the beginning stages of a movement here within our region to try to get through the legislative arm of state government to seek assistance, because at this point, the assistance hasn't been earmarked out of state government for the crisis that's going on. However, I know while the EMA director was sitting in my office this afternoon, that at least one legislator had called him concerning this item and wanted to hear his input on how to approach it. So I think it's just a matter of time. I know the Metro Coalition is passing around a letter to the state representatives in seeking support for help from Augusta coming down into the Portland region. So I think we're on the early front end stages of that effort, and it will probably play out more over the next couple of weeks.
Okay. I'm asking with the commissioners this afternoon, probably around 4:30. I sent you a copy of that report from Mark Wadion. I would ask, that you will look at that report. So, yeah. Is there any other discussion? Oh, Jim Cloutier?
So you had asked what's going to happen with the hotels come April. In years past, you hope to stretch of course, far fewer hotels were used, but stretch that into May, and then frankly, people sleep in cars and camp out. The demand does fall off when the temperature gets a little above zero.
Yeah.
And that's happened. I mean, for years that would happen.
Yeah.
When I was on the council. So, the crisis comes from the weather, the pandemic, and the big flush of people seeking help. So.
Okay. If there's no other discussion, I would call for a vote.
Do we have a second to the motion? I
Oh.
move to, I move passage. I don't know.
Okay.
I'll second
I'll
it.
second it.
I'm sorry. Okay. If there's no further discussion, I call for a vote with Catherine.
Sure. Commissioner Cloutier,
Yes.
Commissioner Coward,
Yes.
Commissioner Gordon,
No.
Commissioner Jameson,
Yes.
and Chair Botonis.
No. Okay. Jim, do we have to do the 22-016, or has that already been done in that motion?
No, we have to do that.
Okay. Okay.
I'll
Now we
move
have.
passage.
I'll
Do we have
second
a
it.
Second. If there's no further discussion, Catherine, can you do a roll call, please?
Commissioner Cloutier,
Yes.
Commissioner Coward,
Yes.
Commissioner Jameson,
Yes.
Commissioner Gordon,
No.
and Chair Botonis.
No. Okay. Moving down to newer business, with Jim, I'm going to give you with 22-018 approval of the payment with terms for towns during the counties with transition of its budget year.
Thank you. As you all know, we are in the midst of working with the towns on transitioning from a calendar year budget to a fiscal year budget, fiscal year being July to June. Our first fiscal year would begin July 1st. One area that we have received a couple of questions about is whether if a town opts to not pay that first 6 months right up in year one, the commissioners have allowed them to spread that out over a number of years, up to 5 years. If they choose to spread it out over a number of years, would there be interest charged to the town for doing so? And so we thought it would be beneficial to bring before you really an action item for the commissioners to act on in terms of the terms around this transition period. In particular, how that first 6 months of our transition is going to take place. So what we're asking for the commissioners to consider this evening is taking a vote on one, the ability for a town to prorate their payment up to 5 years. That's been in the dialogue all along. And two, to waive any interest for those communities that do opt to prorate that first 6 months worth of payment. I believe that was the status when we were going through this, 2 years ago and having these conversations. But we felt as instead of Alex and I making the unilateral decision on our own and telling communities, we felt as though it would best serve us having a motion and a vote by the commissioners. So Alex and I are here to answer any questions that the commissioners may have on this item, and we'd ask you for your support on the 2 items. Thank you.
Do we have Commissioner Jameson and then Commissioner Coward?
Thanks, Chair Botonis. Alex, of the towns that have expressed the need or the desire to stretch it out, what are we talking about for dollars? If we're talking about 6 months payment over a period of, say, 3 years, 5 years, what's the impact on the county's budget?
Well, it'll usually represent, say they go over a 5-year period, that's looking at a 10% bump over what they would otherwise get from the county. Because if you think about it, if it's 50% over 5 years, it's 10 years. Again, the reason why we were really struggling with charging interest is we're already budgeting for the interest on the tax anticipation note. We'd be sort of double hitting them if we tried to charge interest on top of the interest we're budgeting for. And when we budget for the interest, we're essentially charging them for that already. Over that 5-year period, the gradual decrease is something we'd already planned on as well. So that's sort of that. I'm hearing all over the place in terms of what they're looking at doing. I think they are all really mulling this over pretty seriously. I've heard some saying one saying probably 3, some saying 5, but I think this is going to be a very active topic of discussion. There are costs and benefits to the communities of any of these possible ways of doing it.
But nonetheless, it's still limited to that 6-month payment.
Yeah,
When they get back on, when they're all on track 6 months later, everyone's gonna be paying on time. That's the plan, right?
yeah, and so it's very much a pull the Band-Aid off fast or slowly kind of a question for all of them.
Thank you.
Commissioner Coward. Commissioner
Yeah,
Coward.
Neil asked. Yeah, Neil, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, good. Neil asked my basic question, which is what's the impact of this? I guess my feeling was that the counties, the cities, the municipalities get to pay this anyway, one way or the other, because effectively that's where our money comes from. But I guess my only other consideration is, I mean, if we don't charge interest, that's an incentive for cities to spread it out. And the early may feel like they're being discriminated against a little bit because they've ponied up front, and the other cities get to just spread it out at no cost to them. Would it be, tacking interest on would be an incentive for cities to pay up front, right? To get it done quickly. I'm not sure that, I just wondered, Alex, I mean, is there some back of the envelope calculation about, how much, if we charge interest, how much are we going to get out of this? And is it worth the incentive? I'm just want to tease this out just a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's worth mentioning again, though, if we charged interest on this, it would be funds that would be above and beyond anything else that we were going to get otherwise. We wouldn't be losing money out of this because it's all a gain from what we've got at present. What I'm hearing from the municipalities as they do their calculus on what to do, and this has only been from a handful of them so far, it's really having a lot more to do with what budget issues they have coming up right away versus over the next few years. So there are some communities who are feeling like this is probably the right time for them to go for it due to all of the unusual circumstances that have been affecting finances for municipalities all over the place, and some feeling like not. I don't know that interest one way or the other is going to be the deciding factor here, is what I'm getting at. It's not going to be a big enough dollar amount.
Okay.
I think we'd struggle to charge a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. If that's the case, I would be in favor of not charging them interest and just, let them work it out on their own. That generates some small amount of goodwill toward the county that we're not hitting them up for, more money than we do. So I think I'm happy to go without interest on this, I think.
Commissioner Gordon and then Commissioner Cloutier.
Well, to Tom's point, Alex, I presume if you're going to have to borrow money because some communities aren't paying, that they're the ones that will bear that cost.
Sure.
And the others won't.
Well, then we'd have to disproportionately charge the interest on the tax anticipation note to some communities more than others.
Their choice.
Okay.
Commissioner
That's not
Cloutier.
going to be a significant dollar out of the overall, but okay.
Commissioner Cloutier.
Yeah, I'm more in the camp of to the extent that this seems like a painful transition for some of these municipalities who are collecting funds from citizens that are assessed by us. We're not actually taxing the municipalities. This is charging them some differentiated interest calculated. I'm sure it would be calculated fairly, no question, but that's salt in the wound, I'm sure, for some of them, and it doesn't strike me as a beach to die on, to tell you the truth. I think it's not enough money to take the chance that we're inflicting a wound that we will have to heal in some other way.
Let's just, we waive with the interest on this. That would be my suggestion. Let's just waive the interest.
And I hate to say this, but I want to be 100% clear. We are in no way waiving the interest after October 31st of each year. That's critical. But yeah.
Yeah, okay. Okay, if there is no discussion, do I have a motion on this?
So moved.
Well,
Second,
okay, what's the motion actually say? What are we voting to do or not to do?
approval of the payment or the repayment terms for towns or during the counties with transition of its budget year.
Okay,
More
And this
more
includes-
specifically,
What?
more specifically, it would be allowing towns up with 5 years to pay back the 6 months at a 0% interest rate.
okay, good. Just to make it, I just wanted to be clear about what it was.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
I had made the motion.
Oh, you made the motion. Well, did we second it? I didn't hear it.
I'll second it.
Second it. Okay. If there's no further discussion, well, Catherine, can you call for a vote?
Yes, Commissioner Cloutier. Yes,
Yes,
okay.
yes.
I saw you nodding. All right, Commissioner Coward,
Yes.
Commissioner Gordon,
Yes.
Commissioner Jameson,
Yes.
and Chair Watonis.
Yes. Okay. We are going to take with the comments from with the county manager and the executive staff and the commissioners, and then we can go into executive. Okay. Well, comments from the county manager.
Great. Have a few this evening. First is we have scheduled a special meeting. We've talked it over the last couple of months for the end of this month, February 28th, I believe it is. And that is an opportunity to have a workshop and a public hearing around the initial review of opera applications that the committee and staff are working on currently. It's our hopes that we will have enough finished by then to have a fruitful discussion. We'd also probably be seeking some further guidance to make sure that we're all on the same page on how these expenditures go moving forward. The other item that I have is we will, over the next 30 days, be reporting back to the commissioners on the pay classification and step table that the commissioners funded about a year ago. That report is in. Staff has been working through that, really fine tuning how the new step table would look and making sure that every employee, every non-union employee gets placed appropriately on the step table and where they are salary-wise today. That is something that I believe we meet tomorrow morning to hopefully to button that up a little bit. And we can bring that forward in the next 30 days to the commissioners in a workshop and public hearing meeting. I'm happy to announce that the co-occurring collaborative Serving Maine, who annually recognizes people and programs across the 4 categories of visionary leadership, innovative practice, community response, and collaboration. And this year they have selected the Violence Intervention Partnership as their award for the Innovative Practice Award. As many of you know, that is a very strong group of individuals. Faye Lupi here in the county is a very active member and the lead of that. And we just wanted to recognize Faye and the partnership for a job well done, and congratulations on the recognition. They do tremendous work in the county, and it's always nice to be recognized for that. Lastly, we've talked internally and find that this might be our last video meeting for a while. Numbers are turning around, things are looking brighter. And that the 28th meeting, we're hoping and lining up to have back in the courthouse. So I just want to give you an early update on that, that's something we'll be meeting in person. If all goes well, knock on wood, and numbers continue to go south. So that's all I have this evening. Thank you.
Okay. Comments from the executive staff. Is Alex, well, you're first. I always forget you.
Just quickly, the 1095C forms, which are the health insurance forms, should have gone out to everyone, or everyone should have received them last week. Please take a look and make sure everything's right on there, because we'll be submitting that electronically in the next week. And then that's it for tax forms for the year. And if when you're doing your taxes, if it's asking you a ton of detailed questions about that, take a look at how you did that. It shouldn't be asking you too many details on it. And that's all I've got for now. We are getting ready for the audit starting in a few weeks here.
Sheriff Kevin, do you have anything?
Little update on COVID in the jail. Right now, we've got, I think, 5 cases. They're all females. We have 21 tests for the rest of the females in the pod out. Those 5 will drop off, I think, this weekend, and we're crossing our fingers. But the way things have been going, we'll probably get a few more of those cases that are outstanding. So it's somewhat run its course in the jail, but it's still lingering. We have 2 employees out, 2 corrections officers out that I'm aware of, and 1 or 2 in law enforcement that should be back here relatively soon. The inmate that was hospitalized should be back in the jail later this week. And we'll be dealing with some other medical issues with that individual. So good news on that front. Second front is that on Monday, a 24-hour crisis stabilization center opened up on Elm Street. It's being run by Spurwing Services. Actually, it's only open right now, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., only because of the fact that they're looking for nursing staff, mental health staff, and doctors to cover the other 12 hours, which would be 7 p to 7 a. This is great news because it's I've often talked about the Mercy Quick Care of mental health, and that if there were another option between the hospital, emergency room, and jail, that would be huge for law enforcement. So it's a soft opening. There's not a lot of hype on it. I got to tour in October, November, when they were doing construction on this building. And I was back over there last Tuesday, just checking it out before they opened up. I think that law enforcement is, the law enforcement, jail, hospitals, we're all going to benefit. It's pretty good size, but I think we're also worried that eventually this is going to be the supply and demand. There's going to be so much demand that they're only going to be able to help out. But it's a step in the right direction. It's a pilot project that was approved by the legislature in, I think, 1920. So there's some movement on it. And once they are able to open up 24 hours, I think they'll start advertising a little more than they are. So another good bit of good news that, we're often plagued with an individual who's being released from the jail and has some mental health issues. And, we have to release them and we take them to the hospital, the emergency room. If there's no reason to have them in protective custody, now we have an option of taking them to 63 Elm Street and dropping them off there. So that's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Well, Chief, I can hardly see you. You're in the dark.
Well, I can just give you one update for the hiring that I've been involved with. We have with this one candidate that's from Rhode Island, and he's passed the polygraph, medical, physical, all the things that we've asked him to pass through. He can't come here because he can't afford the housing or find housing. So it is a housing issue that we have even for our corrections officers, that they can't find a place to stay if they came from a long ways away. So just. upsetting in a way.
Yeah, that's sad. Let's see. Catherine, would you have anything for us?
No, well, I don't, but thank you for asking.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you for everything you do. And let's see who else. And we have you, Travis. Okay, and you're all set. Okay, now we'll go on to the commissioners. Well, Commissioner Gordon.
Yeah, I think probably what I was going to make a remark about was the jail funding bill, and I've already spoken about that. There are some other issues that are going to be coming before the legislature that involve counties, and if they have real implications for us, I'll certainly bring them forth. It's a pleasure now to work with the MCCA because of what we've done and the lobbyists we have. The legislators are beginning to pay attention to our needs and requirements, and we're not only working by ourselves, but we're working in joint connection with other functionaries. We're working with the Maine State Sheriff, with the Maine Sheriff's Association, and we're working with MMA. So as a partnership, where when we go to some of the hearings, we're all speaking the same and we're supporting one another, which has a great impact. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Jameson.
Thanks, Sue. I would like to applaud all the members of the staff, executive staff, and the staff for doing a great job at the county for keeping COVID under control, particularly in the jail. There's been some outbreaks here and there, but over the course of the 2 years, have done a remarkable job. And Jim and Alex and all the executive staff members and keeping everything running. And we're turning the corner. I look forward to live commissioner meetings. And I encourage all of you to participate, contact us if you have questions or issues, and also all the citizens of the county. We're very close here in Cumberland County. We have a great rate of vaccination and a great rate of safety, but let's stay the course. And if there are mask requirements indoors, let's continue to do that. And in a few months, it could make a remarkable difference. To those players out there who are entering tournaments, high school tournaments, whether they be basketball or ski tournaments or wrestling tournaments, we wish you the best of luck. We encourage all the citizens out there in those various towns and regions where the tournaments to support them and to enjoy the process because it really is it's part of the high school experience. Thank you very much. That's all I have.
Commissioner Coward.
Thank you, Commissioner Watonis. First, kudos to Commissioner Gordon for his work with MCCA. That can be a very frustrating organization to lead. I'm happy, and Cumberland County has been trying to be involved with MCCA for a long time. And we've had back-to-back leadership in that organization, and I'm happy to hear that Commissioner Gordon has redoubled the effort to work with other groups, particularly MMA, which historically we've had kind of a arm's length relationship with. And if we can get county and municipal government pulling together, then we can all get a lot more done with the legislature than we have. So, Steve, my hat is off to you. I understand what you're doing, and it sounds like things are going very well. So, thank you very much for doing that. I think Cumberland County needs to continue to try to be a leader in the state among county governments. It can be a little challenging. The county government in Maine is a very diverse garden of different sorts of plants that are growing, and we don't always agree. But we need to be forward about what we think ought to happen. We are major player in the state. And the more everybody recognizes that, I think the better off everybody will be. So thank you very much for that. I am pleased to look at the statewide and countywide figures on hospitalizations and so forth for COVID. I think we are on the downward slope of the current problems. I hope that continues. We do need, as Commissioner Jameson said, we do need to stay the course. We need to keep conscious of the problems that we have. And this will drive things down to eventually we'll get back to something that somewhat resembles normal life. I think, unfortunately, we've still got quite a few more months to go before it's entirely safe to just go about your life. But with a little bit of care and a little bit of thought, and wear your mask when you're I wear my mask in the grocery store. I'm pleased to say that this part of the state, you go to the grocery store and everybody's got a mask on. That is really good. I think that's the thing that we need to continue. Other than that, I'm looking forward to maybe getting a little warm weather under our belts here. This is the time of winter when I start to get tired of winter. I'm looking forward to spring. So, I've got the ice off my driveway and off my sidewalk, and so I'm feeling a little more optimistic about how the year is going to go. So thank you very much.
Commissioner Cludia.
I was considering mimicking Catherine and simply saying nothing, but thanks for asking.
No
But
chance.
I will say, no, that would be the first time, I imagine.
I know.
No, and I just want to express the hope that the third time's the charm. I think we've gone back to live meetings. This will be the third time, and I hope that that sticks. Other than that, nothing else. Thanks for asking.
Somebody take his temperature.
I'm going to stick with what Catherine. I don't have anything. So, Jim McGaley, would you like to speak again? You're muted.
You would think after 2 years, I would figure that out. After I got off from my earlier comments, I received an email from Sandy Warren in the office, and she has let me know that the ARPA committee this morning has decided that they'd like a few more weeks to work through the number of applications that they have received. And so she doesn't feel as though the 28th will be a date that they're going to be shooting for. So it looks like we might be dealing with that work on March 14th instead. So at this point, I just wanted to make the announcement that the 28th is probably not going to happen. We'll have to wait another month to meet in person on March 14th. Thank you.
Can we start them or no?
She was saying that the committee really wants to have an opportunity to go back to the applicants, ask a number of questions, really dig into some of the applications before they want to bring forward a recommendation. And I would support that. I think it would be beneficial to take a look at a whole group versus sending some through earlier than others.
So now it's, what did you say? Well, March what?
14th.
14. And that will be in person, hopefully. Okay.
Yes.
Does anybody else have any final comments or?
Well, does that mean the 28th is not a workshop?
At this time, we do not have anything else for that meeting unless the commissioners have something that they would like to talk about. But I just wanted to let you know that the ARPA item that we had that was going to occupy that meeting is going to be bumped off.
Well, okay. I guess what I'm looking for is to take it off my calendar.
Take it off your calendar.
Okay. Because once it comes off, it doesn't go back on. Okay.
Understood.
We are all done with our our meeting. Now I need a motion to go into executive session. And to read the motion.
So moved.
Okay. And do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. We-
Chair, would you mind
Yes.
if I, just so that we're all legal, could I read the?
Yes, you can. I was just gonna, but you can take it over. Yep, go ahead.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
The first is enter into executive session pursuant to general provisions title 1 MRSA, subsection 405-6D for the opportunity to discuss negotiations at the cross insurance rate. And the second executive session is enter into executive session pursuant to general provisions title 1 MRSA, subsection 405-6A to discuss employment, assignments, and appointments. It is anticipated that once we come out of executive session, there will be at least one motion, possibly if the discussion goes in that direction. So I just wanted to let those watching at home, we will be jumping off video, but we will be returning for motions and adjournment. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now we need a vote.
We need a vote.
Oh, I call for a vote.
Commissioner Cloutier,
Jim.
Yes.
Commissioner Coward,
Yes.
Commissioner Gordon,
Yes.
Commissioner Jameson,
Yes.
and Chair Watonis.